Thanks, Taylor, Brad, and Dom, for your time tonight just to discuss the importance of mental health, with this week being Children's Mental Health Week and specifically Thursday being Time to Talk Day. Taylor, do you think mental health is a massive issue? And more importantly, do you think it sometimes almost goes under the radar in terms of how big an issue it is, because someone could be struggling with mental health and might not even show symptoms of it. It could remain hidden to anybody who might be looking at them.
Yeah, massively. It's a massive problem. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot more people suffer from it than they let on or people know about. Obviously, it affects different people in different ways. And like you said, there's no symptoms to it. Do you know what I mean? You could put a smile on, you could go to work, you could put a smile on when you see everyone, but when you're alone, nobody really knows, do they? So I think it's a massive issue, and I think there's a lot of people that don't speak up enough about it.
Yeah, it is a big issue, and I think don't speak about it. But Brad, do you think there's a stigma around mental health, particularly for male sort of individuals who are maybe around their young 20s or mid 20s? Do you reckon there's a stigma surrounding mental health that prevents them from discussing it with people?
Yeah, I do, to be honest. Yeah, because being a young lad, it's all about pride, isn't it? Really, when you're going out and people feel ashamed of speaking up if they are going through a bit of bad mental health at the time. So, yeah, I do think that. Yeah. And
you think sort of it's been heightened by what's going on with COVID, Dom? Obviously, it's not great, but because of how people have been needed to self-isolate and sort of have been restricted and being able to talk about it, has that sort of increased the issue of mental health?
Yeah, massive. I mean, times are in at the minute, nobody knows when we're going to get out of it, or when we do, what restrictions are going to be in place. Nobody's been able to see anyone for the vast majority of the time. I think there's no doubt that it's gone up since COVID, and people can't really speak to anyone as easy as they could. You can't go out and play football with your mates and have a chat with them on the side, or go play golf with your mates, or just go out with your mates or anything, or just have a chat with anyone. So, we've got Zoom and we've got all of those sort of, video activities and all that sort of thing, but it's not the same. And when you're being cramped up indoors, you're kind of left with your own mind, and there's not much else to do than sit there and think, really, and then that's going to add to it, certainly in my opinion anyway.
Has there been an instance, it could have been in the Gainsborough team at the moment, has there been an instance with you three where you've had an experience with mental health yourself, or you've known someone who has struggled with mental health?
No, well, not that we know of. Not that I know of, anyway. I know people can be down about certain things and whatnot, but I've never personally suffered with it. But I don't know of anybody in the squad. I know people outside of football that suffer with mental health quite badly and have for a while, but no, I don't know anybody in the squad particularly.
You've mentioned before, Dom, about having Zoom, and obviously with COVID and being in lockdown, it is difficult. But what are sort of the methods that people can use Zoom for? So for you lads, you obviously haven't been able to meet up in person, or particularly play games or train together that as often as you've been able to before COVID. But what has Zoom sort of been? What have you lads been doing with it in order to sort of stay in touch and sort of keep that sort of close-knit bond you had before?
Footballing wise, we've been doing, as I think I've seen some of the videos, that we've been doing Zoom sessions in a week. On a Tuesday, do some sort of fitness session, and then every other Friday we come together as a squad, which is good that we're keeping fit. And then afterwards, 10-15 minutes at the end, we'll have a drink and just have a chat. So you're still catching up with each other. I think it's been good, just been able to keep in contact. And outside of football, some of our lads have been doing a quiz once a week where you just come together, have a bit of a laugh, do a quiz night, and then that keeps you all interacted. So it's not the same as meeting them, but it's certainly better than not being able to speak to them at all.
And do you think, Brad, how important a role does sport play in terms of tackling mental health?
Yeah, massive role. I mean, when you go to work every day and you come home and some people just do nothing, where sport, it brings load of people together. You're seeing all your mates regularly, and yeah, it just takes your mind off the dark times.
I wanted to ask you, Taylor, about grassroots, and do you think enough is being done at grassroots level? Because mental health is a big issue, but it might sort of get overlooked at this level. Do you think enough is being done to sort of tackle it?
I think it's a hard topic to discuss, really, because like for all we know, all of us could be suffering right now, and we could all just be lying to each other's face. I mean, nobody knows, so there's not a lot you can do about it initially. Do you know what I mean? It takes somebody to speak out to be able to help him. And I don't know, like possibly they could be doing more, but I don't see what they could be doing. Maybe like a meeting 1-to-1 to see how you're getting on and things like that. But even then, people might not speak up. So sometimes I just suppose you can't do a lot about it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
It is tough the way you've sort of put that about it, that you don't know if anyone might be struggling with it, because as you say, they might not show any of the symptoms when it could be affecting them massively. Is there anything that Gainsborough, the club themselves, are doing at this moment to sort of try and help people with it? Sort of, they offered anything?
Not for mental health specifically, but in terms, like Dom said, we do the Zooms is like the workout on a Tuesday, and then on the Friday, every other Friday, we do the yoga, which is a bit of a laugh anyway, because none of us are very flexible. And then, like the other week, we sat around and had a beer, had a little tour, you know, just like you would do after training. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not ideal, but like Dom said, it's better than nothing. To be fair, Brad's really good. Brad, I don't know what he's like with the other lads, but I speak to him, Brad, near enough every day.
Yeah, daily,
yeah. Whether that be about Gainsborough, whether that be about Liverpool, or do you know what I mean, anything. Brad's really good with it, to be fair. So I think keeping in contact as much as you can with the lads and with Brad, I think that really helps loads of people.
I think with our squad, we all, I think probably all of us at one point have put a message in saying if anyone needs a chat or anything, you know, the ring and stuff like that. So I'd say in our squad, I think everyone has put a message in saying that. So any of us would reach out to anyone in the squad, and I'm pretty sure they'd help them, even if you're not necessarily that close to them.
Yeah, definitely.
How important, Brad, do you think the tight-knit bond that you lads have is in terms of tackling mental health? Because let's just pose a scenario that someone in the squad may be suffering mental health and you might not know about it, but how important a role does sort of you lads being there for one another and having that close bond play in terms of tackling this?
Yeah, it's massive. That's one of the main issues. People not having someone else to talk to about it, about your problems, and opening up. So just having that person there to speak to it can really, really help just to get it off your mind. So yeah, it plays a massive part in it. Yeah.
And for any of you three, if you were to struggle with mental health, it's obviously it might be easier talking to a friend, a family member, someone you know quite well about it. But how difficult do you think it is to talk to a stranger about it, sort of to open up to someone you've never met before, someone who knows nothing about you, and talk about an issue that's specifically plaguing you so badly?
I don't think personally, I think I'd struggle to do it with a stranger. I'd rather do it with someone that I knew. I've never suffered with it personally, but I know people that have, that are very reluctant to speak to strangers or people that get paid to do it because they think that, you know, it's their job and they're not particularly that interested. So I think particularly me and being a lad, it'd be hard to speak to someone that you don't know. I'd rather speak to someone that I did know first personally anyway.
You think that can be where the issue is, Dom? Because you know, a lot's been done to try and help mental health, but is that a hurdle that almost we haven't overcome yet? That's sort of the next step in almost trying to defeat this problem.
Yeah, massively. People are so reluctant to talk, and you hear a lot of mental health of these helplines that are there to help, but I don't see a lot of pushing people as to, you know, to making that first step to actually call the number. Calling a number and asking someone for help is the first step, and I think they've kind of missed that bit out and said, well, there's the number, but you've got to try and, you know, get people to actually make that call in the first place, otherwise there's no point in it being there.
And I'll try and phrase this in the right manner. How comfortable would you three be if anyone were to come up to you and someone you didn't know particularly well, let's say a friend of a friend who you didn't know too well, and wanted to talk to you about their mental health, how would any of you three react to that? How easy do you think it would be to sort of discuss it with them?
Well, I'd be proud of them first off, straight away, for accepting it and being big enough that's man enough, I suppose, or woman enough, I don't know, to come out and speak to somebody. Like Dom said, the first step is to ring that number or accept that you've got a problem. Do you know what I mean? So that well done for straight away, and then well done for speaking about it and actually seeking help.
And you mentioned the element of pride. Is that sort of one of the biggest factors, Brad, do you think, in terms of sort of, because some people might view this as being a bit weak, having this problem and affecting your pride. I mean, do you sort of think, is that one of the reasons why someone might not want to discuss it, because they feel it's sort of, they feel a bit defeated almost as a human being?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is one of the main reasons, to be honest, because people are so ashamed that they might be ashamed that they've accepting the problem that they've got. So they might be reluctant, as Dom said, to speak up about it to someone else. So they keep it all built up inside, and it's not the right thing to do. You need to get it off your chest and just speak to a family friend or your family, close friend, anyone.
It is difficult at this sort of at grassroots level if you are struggling with mental health, but it helps having significant figures in, let's say, the footballing world, ex-players or ex-coaches who've come out and discussed sort of their issues with mental health. Can any of you three almost, I wouldn't say relate's the right word, but sort of almost be inspired by what they do, and sort of, can you take what these sort of people who've played at the highest level of football, who've come out and talked about an issue that might be affecting anyone, can any of you three take anything from that and sort of take on board any tips and any advice that they might have given?
Yeah, massively. If there's a big, footballer who's, played for, a big club and they come out and admit they've had mental health issues, I think that can only inspire other people to come out and admit they've got a problem. You think of them on 200-300 grand a week. How can they be unhappy? But if they're coming out and admitting that they are, you probably think yourself, well, it's it's not just me. If they're unhappy, it can't just be me, and that would personally inspire me to speak out anyway. If you know that you're not the only one dealing with the issue.
And you three, I think, have all mentioned that you've known people who have struggled with mental health. And if it's all right, would you mind sharing any tips that these people might have shared in terms of dealing with their mental health, and perhaps if any of them have overcome it?
Yeah, well, one of the person I know, and I'm not going to mention the name, but this person, she like writes in a diary, in like a book type thing of like a to-do list, stuff that she needs to get done throughout the day. And that helps motivate her to like get out and get her things done. Right. And then she goes through, ticks them off, and then she like at the bottom she like reflects on the day, like what she needs to do and how she's done it and things like that. Like it could even just be go to the shop for milk, but that could be really hard for some people. That could be really hard. Like I know other people as well who don't leave the house at all. They don't work because they feel like they can't. So something as little as that is making a list and helping yourself, actually motivating you getting out. I know that helps some people.
That is good. And Brad and Dom, are there any sort of the people who you might have known to have struggled with mental health and feel comfortable not to answer this if you don't want to, have there been any sort of advice that they might have told you that has helped them overcome the mental health that they might have been struggling with?
Just staying busy, as Taylor said. Stay busy, keep your mind off it as much as you can, and if you can't do that, speak to someone about it. Reach out as soon as possible so your problem don't get any worse.
Yeah, the person that I know, again, I'm not going to name names, they said to me as soon as they actually spoke to someone about it and actually got it off their chest, they literally felt like it was a weight lifted off their shoulders, like they were bottling it up and they didn't want to admit it. And as soon as they did and spoke to someone about it and they give them their point of view, they find it massively helpful. And same as what Taylor said, writing stuff down, feeling like they've accomplished something in the day. If you write or you list down as what you're going to do throughout the day, you tick it all off, you feel like you've accomplished something. I think a lot of people kind of feel there's no kind of purpose to getting up in the day, and if they set themselves tasks or something to do and they've done them, there's some sort of accomplishment to the day, and that personally makes them feel better.
Yeah, like Dom said, speaking, that helps massively. Like, my mum always used to say to me, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I suppose there is some truth in that, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And one thing that I didn't touch on as much with the coaches when I did this talk yesterday, and I want to focus a bit more with you lads, is sort of one of the biggest sort of age groups that struggles with mental health are sort of the age that you lads are, sort of young adults, sort of young people who are in their early 20s or entering their mid 20s. How would you how would you three feel if you were ever to struggle with mental health in terms of speaking up, being sort of the age you are and where you are in life, or let's say someone like a team member who was your age or similar in age, how sort of encouraged would you be to encourage them to speak up about it?
Well, I think that's a hard question. You know, like they're saying easier said than done. Do you know what I mean? We could all sit here and say, "Oh, I'd ring this number, I'd speak to this mate, I would do this, I'd do that," but you never know unless you was in that situation. Like I said earlier, it affects people differently. Do you know what I mean? Like with certain things as well. So I don't know. It was one of them you'd have to be in a position to do.
Speak.
But I'd like to think I'd seek help, but you don't know, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, you, I'd like to think that you'd speak up, but until you're in that position, you know, you can say now with us three, well, you presume we haven't got any mental health problems, you would say, "Oh, I'll speak up," but until you're in that position, it's so hard. And if someone was to come and say, "You know, I've got mental health issues," I'd encourage them to speak up, because, you know, people are told to speak. So there is the evidence behind that, as once they speak up, it does get better. But I'm with Taylor, until you're in that position, personally, it's hard to say whether you'd seek help or not.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult, and the hardest thing for me is just sort of being able to sort of empathise with it and sort of understand the nature of the problem, having never sort of come across it myself. So it's just sort of how it can almost seem hidden, the issue. It might not. You can look at it from a distance and look at someone, and you know, they might be struggling terribly with anxiety and depression, and you might not be able to tell it all. As you say, they might, you know, put on a smile, be happy, and sort of everything might be fine. So, and that's what I think the biggest issue is in terms of overcoming it.
Massively, because if you like a physical injury, if you chat with a lot among your mates and you've both broken an ankle, you can relate to the pain and you know, the trauma of going through it and the rehab and all of that. But if you've never been through mental health, you've never understood it, what gets someone down who's got mental health issues may seem so irrelevant to you. So I think struggling to understand the problem is part of the problem itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, spot on.
That's interesting that you touch on injury, Dom. And I want to ask you lads, playing football at the moment, has there ever been a serious injury issue that you lads might have had to overcome? And sort of, have you ever felt down at any point about not being able to play or struggling with any sort of fitness problems that could perhaps bring about mental health?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it affects people massively. Like when just as I left college, I completely torn all the ligaments in my ankle. And I didn't play for over a year because of that. That kept me out for a whole year, and I was on crutches for months, and it just never seemed to really get any better. Like, it's still dodgy now, to be fair. I've got as much use as a chocolate teapot on my ankle. But after, like, football's such a big part of a lot of people's lives, you know, you watch it day in, day out, you play it day in, day out. So, like, for me not to do that for a whole year, it was like, well, what do I do with myself now? You know what I mean? Like, when I was at college, we used to train every day. I used to play 3 games a week. So, like, suddenly doing none of that, I didn't really know what to do with myself. So, a little bit like lockdown now, I suppose. I was in the house all day, not really doing it. I couldn't get up and go on a walk or something. Do you know what I mean? So, that got me down quite a while for a bit, I suppose. And then, even when I did come back, like I was a bit timid going into tackles and things. Like you say you won't be, but it's in the back of your mind.
Mm.
Like these big 50-50s and fitness problems. Like I was blowing after 10 minutes. Like it was such a struggle. So I think yeah, and that's obviously just with ligaments. I'd hate to think what a leg break or a really, do you know what I mean, a longer term injury would be.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's a massive hurdle to overcome. And was there and again, feel free to not want to ask this if you don't want to, Taylor. Was there ever any point in your injury where you felt, I know you mentioned about being down, were you ever felt particularly down and almost willing to give up, like didn't think you were able to come back from this, didn't think you'd be able to perform to the same level again? Was there ever a point that sort of crossed your mind?
Yeah, numerous times. Like pretty much every other day I thought about packing it in. Like I was having physio on it and everything, and it just never seemed to, like, normally should be a gradual improvement, and it just wasn't really getting any better. And then with it being so weak, the slightest sort of roll on it, it would go again, it would swell, it would bruise, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to play again. Like I remember I was walking out with my girlfriend, and I sort of just tripped on the curb, and it went, and that was it. And then I couldn't walk again for a month, and I was like, how am I going to get through a 90-minute game of football when I can't even walk up and down a curb properly?
Yeah, credit to you for being able to come back from such a bad injury. Was there, whenever you felt in that sort of mindset, what did you try and do to sort of tackle that, if anything, or were there times where you almost kept it to yourself?
Well, to be fair, I was that sort of down about it, and I was fed up, really. I was ready to pack it in, that I didn't do anything to get myself out of it. It was more my friends and family.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, my dad was persuading me to come back and do this, do that. And I remember my mum, we were doing physio things with my mum after physio. Like, we were kicking a balloon against the wall and then kicking a beach ball against the wall and slowly working up like that. So I'd say mum and dad were a big part of that coming back. And then my girlfriend, she was helping me out a lot. So I'd say it was more friends and family getting me through it rather than myself, to be fair.
And I think that's probably, I think you've exactly sort of hit the nail on the head there in terms of dealing with this problem. Is sort of, it's just being able to, even if you don't want to talk about it, just having those people around you to be able to sort of get you through it, even if you don't want to discuss it and sort of just want to bury the problem away. Just having, as you say, your friends, your family, or anybody else, just to sort of almost put you in a better place when you feel really down about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, massively helped.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Brad, or you, Dom, if you've ever gone through a period like that, whether it be with a footballing injury or an injury in general or anything else, where you've almost had a defeatist mindset and want to give up, and sort of been in that dark place.
Yeah, with me, I tore my ACL when I was 12. I had my operation, and I was out from football for about nearly 2 years. And for the 2 years, it was just the hardest thing I've ever had. Not playing football, and then you're coming back, you're doing your rehab. You're doing your rehab next to where your teammates are training, and seeing them training, and you just doing running and balance just to get back up to scratch. It's hard. It is hard, but you have to be right mentally, and you have to see the bigger picture, and there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, you just got to keep on going, and you'll get there.
Sort of similar to what Taylor mentioned, what did you do, sort of, if anything, to sort of get you through that period where you might have, felt really bad, felt really down, want to give up?
With me, because at the position I was in at the time, I was with Barnsley, so I kind of saw that I had to get through this to give myself the best opportunity of trying to be a professional footballer at the time. But yeah, you have to set little goals when you reach, as Tay said, with a balloon and beach ball. You have to just have to adapt to it, and you'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, credit to you both for being able to come back from such bad injuries. And what about you, Dom? Have you ever had a really bad injury you might have suffered?
Yeah, similar to Taylor and Brad. I did my ankle when I did my ligaments in my ankle when I was about 13, and it was never right again for probably about 2 years. I'd have little setbacks, and like Taylor said, walking along the curb and just coupling your ankle, and then you end up not being able to walk again for a couple of weeks. It was hard, particularly at that age, because when you're 13, you just want to play football all the time. You're playing for school, you're playing after school. You're playing on a weekend, probably on a Saturday and a Sunday as well. So you're just used to living and breathing football, and then watching all your mates play. And you just, you're out there on crutches watching them. It's hard, particularly when you feel like you've got over it, and your first tackle or your first game, and it doesn't feel as strong, and you go and do it again. You just think, Christ, is it ever going to be the same again? So it's very hard when you're in that position, particularly at such a young age. I think now if you get injured, you kind of accept you've got to, go through it and go through the process the right way. But at that age, it's so hard. It's just like, can you be bothered to carry on if my ankle's like this at 13?
Yeah. And for you three, obviously, I'm sure you'll have come across fellow players when you've been at the same clubs who have struggled with injury. Has any of you three ever noticed or asked the fellow players when they might have been injured if they're all right, if they're they're mentally okay? Because from the outside, it could just seem like that they've got a really bad injury and they might be out for, let's say, 6 to 8 months, and it will be a process and a long period of time to get back. But has there ever been an instance where you look at them and you might think, oh, not only is he physically, not in a great place, but mentally is he not in a great place? Isn't there anything I can do to sort of help him with
it? Yeah, I think there's been times of that. Like, obviously, at the end of the day, you want to play football, don't you? So when you can't, it's frustrating and you get fed up. And if it's a lengthy injury, then sometimes, like Dom said, you might never be the same again. Like, it even happens in professional football. Yeah. Like, it can just happen. Like, Ethan Redmond, he's just gone and left the 21s, and that's because of a persistent knee problem. Like, after a while, like, he's just not really come back from that, and it's causing him pain, so he hasn't been doing the Zooms and things like that. So I can imagine that's getting him down, and unfortunately, he's like ended up leaving because of it.
And I obviously don't want to pry into his sort of issues. Obviously, with him not being here, and it is a private matter. But has there been an instance where he might have been feeling down and might have been struggling mentally, and was there anything that you lads or Games might have done to sort of help him cope with it?
Not that I can think of, really, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we say, I don't want to explore the issue any further if Ethan's not here himself.
Yeah.
But that might just be the sort of the biggest issue with mental health, is that you just can't see what people are dealing with, and it might sort of be eating them up inside, and you just might not know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think I've asked everything I want to about mental health. I don't know if you lads want to add anything about it.
Not really. Apart from I would just encourage people to speak up if they were struggling, like whether that be a friend, whether that be family, whether, like you said, a friend of a friend, or Dom said, ring a number. Do you know what I mean? It's like I say, a problem shared is a problem halved. So you don't know how much it could help you.
Yeah, of course. And as you said, you hit the nail on the head. For anybody out there who might be struggling with mental health, Gainsborough have many lines open and are always willing to hear anybody's problems, and are openly happy to discuss mental health with anybody who might be struggling with it. But thank you, Taylor, Dom, and Brad, for your time, and specifically for coming on and talking about your experiences with injury and people who have struggled with mental health that you've known. That's really important, and thank you for just coming on and discussing how important mental health is.
Yeah, cheers, Josh.
Thank you.
Cheers, lads. Thanks very much. Have a great rest of the evening.